decide? Everybody here today that has a vocation or had a vocation, in the workaday world, how did you decide to do what you ended up doing or what you're now doing? How did you decide? How did you discern what you should be doing with your life? How were you called to it? How were you called to it? I'm thinking about that concept of call this morning as we see the disciples called by Jesus. See Peter and Andrew and James and John. And reflect upon how we came to do the things that we did. Some of us came into it, no doubt, because we had a skill set that was adapted for it, or a personality set that was fit for it, or a set of a passion and an interest for something that made us, that called us to it, or it called to us. That's the way we do things. Sometimes we end up doing things because we end up being called to it by desperation. Somebody says in church, oh, you know what, we need somebody to come and do this. And people say, well, I don't have the skills for that. But, yeah, but we just need a warm body. Just need a warm body. I want you this morning just to kind of reflect a little bit before we get rolling on the big stuff. Reflect about how you ended up doing what you're doing. How you ended up doing what you're doing. When I went to college, I was sure that I was going to become a doctor. I loved biology and advanced biology, and I was charging out the door to Drake University. I entered in the pre-med program, and a year and a half, I had switched my major to English. It was either literature or it was composition. I'm not exactly sure which. And I did that because pre-med did not allow for partying. You actually had to study. And there was a goal, and you had to be headed toward that. And oh my goodness! So a year and a half in, I took a big change in my career and or in my aim, I should say. I felt called suddenly. Called to English. Because it was easy, and I didn't have to study. When we consider how we ended up where we are, there are a lot of logical reasons, maybe some of them better logical reasons than the one that I just shared with myself. A lot of logical reasons why we end up where we do. But when we see the gospel this morning and we see those disciples gathered there with their nets, with their boats, with the fish, with their daddy, when we see that, we realize this is not a story that's normal human behavior. Not from the get-go. It's not normal human behavior. Barbara Brown Taylor, who's a beautiful preacher and teacher, theologian, says the story of this gospel, listen for it, is a miracle story. It's a miracle story. Jesus, walking down the side of the beach, looking out at the water, sees some guys. Now, Jesus understands his mission by this point, and he sees some guys there, and he decides, okay, that's who I'm going to call for my mission. Some guys. There's no plan. There's no goal. There are no objectives. There are no lining out what kinds of people we need in order to get this job done, whatever it is. This ushering in, this nearness of the kingdom, this call to repent, whatever it is. There is absolutely no human sense in this. He doesn't decide, you know what we need to have? In order for this mission to be successful, see, if he was a church person, this is what he would do. We need to have people who are good at talking. We need to have people who have some teaching skills. We need to have some people who have charisma. You know, they're not complete lumps on the log. They have charisma. We need to have some people who have real good knowledge of the Torah and real good knowledge of the history of Israel and the words of the prophets. And in order for this group to grow, to thrive, to do what it is it needs to do, whatever that is, they need to have some people who are accountants. And we need to have some people who have fire in their belly. People who are passionate about the mission. People who have a vision for the mission. And people with a good reputation. That if you were going to do this the right way, if you were going to do it the way the church does it, that is the way that you would do it. And failing all those other things, you would at least need to get some people that don't stink like fish. There's no target. There's no aim. There's no plan. And whoever shows up are called. Whoever's there are called. It's like Jesus himself is doing exactly what the disciples are doing. He doesn't put, you know the way we fish? You know how we fish? Can I see the fisher's hands in here, peeps? Come on, put your hands up. Yeah. Don't. If you don't have your hand up, there you go. You know what's in my tackle box. You know, I finally, 10 years ago, I quit buying tackle because I didn't have enough years left to use that much tackle as I already had. And you got a lure for every kind of fish that you want to get. You know what I mean? Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. I don't have to explain it any more than that. That's not Jesus' approach. It's like he's like these fishermen. He just throws a net out there. He just says, here's James and John, here's Peter and Andrew. Here, y'all. Some years ago, a lot of years ago, when I was in seminary, my mom and my stepdad said, when you come to Florida, let's go down to the Florida Keys. We'll take a nice road trip through the glades, and then we'll go down the Keys, and we'll just fish all the way down. And we stopped at every bridge, and we put our line over the side, and of course nothing bit on it, because my stepdad did not want to catch any fish. He just wanted to catch some rays. But when we got to Key West, I said, you know what? You are staying back in the motel, and I am going out tomorrow morning, and I'm going to go on a boat with some people who want to catch some fish. So I got in the boat the next morning. There's only 4 of us. It was rainy. It was nasty. It was a horrible day. And I caught fish after fish after fish. I caught like 25 fish. You can believe that if you want to. We're bottom fishing. And the other 3 people on the boat, one of them caught snapper. What was I doing wrong? One of them caught several group. The other 2 or 3 caught grouper. But I was catching. Think about the fish now. Think about their names. Think about what those names represent. Porgies and grunts. They are analogous to sunfish, and well, I don't know that they are, but in my book, they're analogous to sunfish. I'd have done better. I'd have done the same if I just sent a net out there and picked up whatever was in the place. That's what Jesus does in this call experience. That's how you know it's a miracle. That's how you know it's not human, because you know what we do. I already told you. We got to have the right people on the right places on the bus. There's a beautiful book a few years ago that quite a number of years ago by Jim Collins called From Good to Great. And he says over and over again, it's a management book, an organizational management book for success. And I just was so captivated with the kind of person that he was, the things that he said on TV. So I read the book, and I was captivated there, because it says, you know, what's really important is to have the right people in the right seats on the bus. That's what human is. That's what success is. That's what makes everything work. This is not this instance in the call of the disciples. Jesus calls people like you. Oh, wait, I meant me. People who don't have a plan, people who don't have any organizational skills. Yeah, I know some of you do, but people who aren't up to it, people who aren't holy enough, people who stink at a whole lot of things. See, I've saved that. Who stink at a whole lot of things. He calls us, he sweeps us up. And that's how you know is not the church. Because that isn't how we do things in the church. We got an organization here. You know what I mean? We got an organization. The response, the next part of it is that it's a miracle story. The next part of it is that those men, regardless of what they have going on at home, regardless of what their obligations are at the moment they're at the side of the lake, those men left. And I want you to just repeat this after me. They left. It says, and immediately they left. Say that. Immediately they left. Okay. They left there. In the first case, they left the lake because they were out there. Peter and Andrew are out on the lake, and Jesus yells at them and says, come on, I'm going to make you fish for people. And so they leave their boat, or they leave the lake, they leave their boat, they leave their nets, and they follow. That's what it says. So I want to say that again. Say that again. I want you to say it with me. They left the lake. They left the boat. They left the nets. And they followed. And then he goes farther down the beach, and he finds James and John, and they are there with their daddy. It is a multiple generation endeavor that they're there. Their obligations are sitting right there with them in their daddy. And he says to them, get up and follow me, and they do it. So you got to say it. They left the boat. They left their nets. They left their daddy. And they followed. Okay, we've already established there's no plan. The people who are called are not up to the task. It doesn't make any sense what they do. And in what they say, they don't say, well, now look. We are glad to follow you. We believe you're the king. We believe in this message. We believe in this vision. We believe in this mission. We're going to follow you, but first, like in the other places in the gospel, first we got to go home. Peter has a wife. We know he has a wife. You know how we know he has a wife? Because later he has a mother-in-law. And I understand that you don't get those without a wife or a husband. So he doesn't, no reference to the people at home. James and John, they do not say, well, now first let us finish mending the nets so we don't leave our dad in a bad place, and then let us arrange for a replacement so that we don't leave our dad stranded, and then let us go home because we're not dressed for discipleship. We stink. No. They got up and they left. Jesus' word to them in Greek is deote. Deote. Say that. Deote. No one will know if you're saying it wrong. It's come. Anybody got a dog? People got a dog? People got dogs. Next time you want to do something, say deote. When I had a dog, his name was Buddy. You're not the boss of me, Williams. And it didn't matter what language I said, come in, he would say, you're not the boss of me. But this urgency is the same urgency that we would apply. The urgency of this message, come, follow, come, follow, come, follow. I don't care if you are not ready. I do not care if you stink. I don't care if you don't have the skill set. I don't care if you don't think you're called because you don't have the knowledge and you don't have the passion and you don't. This call is to us. Church needs to hear that because too often we want to talk about call in terms of, well, now, is that person particularly gifted for that ministry? And that's a good thing to ask, isn't it? It's a good, you don't want somebody who can't read to do some things that require reading. But the issue is that when Christ calls us to come and follow, it is to drop everything. Not just our commitments, our obligations, our people, but also to drop our objections about how we're not gifted for something. So you guys know that phrase that says, God doesn't call the equipped, God equips the called. You've heard that before. Every preacher likes to say that. This is part of our stewardship sermon. But it happens to be true because in this passage, this is the great miracle. The great miracle is that not only does God call those disciples, God creates them with the ability to follow. God gets them up off their hiney and sends them. God makes it possible. Today, when you're thinking about that, it's always a really good day on the day of a congregational meeting to remember that as we say goodbye to 1 year's worth of material, we are opening a door on another year of material, and we are called again, each of us individually, to new ministries, to new relationships, to new ways of being in the world with Jesus Christ. That happens on a day where we turn that corner in an annual meeting. We also are mindful today as we say officially in worship farewell to our dear brother, Pastor Eliezer Ortiz. That here is a man who answered a call in a different place, in a different time, and with different language. And by that call, by virtue of answering that call, wherever it took him, ended up here among us, planting a seed of the gospel that will continue to be seen rising into new plants. You don't even know how that's going to be. That's the miracle of the call. The miracle of the call. So today, you have been miraculously called. The fact that you're here is a miracle. The fact that you're not someplace else is a miracle. The fact that God got a hold of you is a miracle. The fact that you do any good at all anywhere with anybody is a miracle. See, you like to think it's because it's your skill set. No, it's a miracle. It's God's grace. It's God working in you and through you, not just for you, but for others with you. It's a miracle. So as we leave today, we ask this question of each other, of ourselves. We ask for God to help us to answer it in our lives and in our ministries. How can we be more open to God's call in our lives? How can we not put up all those defenses that are very human, not insist on all the excellences that we think make for success? How can we hear God's call more clearly in our lives? That's question number one. I got these questions off somebody else, but I thought they were good, so I'm sharing them today. To what new ministry might God be calling you now? Never mind what you've done. Never mind I've always done this. Never mind. What new ministry is God calling you now? And to what new ministry or what kinds of new ministry might God be calling the church? That's a question for the year, a question for walking with your new pastor and in examining, but I will tell you that according to this gospel lesson, Jesus' mission is this. Here's what he did at the end of this gospel lesson. He taught in the synagogues, he preached good news, and he cured, he healed the sickness and disease. Well, the mission of the people that Christ calls unto him is teaching, preaching, healing. Say that. Teaching, preaching, healing. So what sacrifices? This is the last question. What sacrifices